You look like you want to tell me something. You look like you have something really important to say and you just can't for some reason. Jim, you can tell me anything.
When you think about The Office, one of the first things that pops into your head is the relationship between Pam and Jim. For the better part of a decade, they were seen as America's couple. But here's the thing. This relationship was almost destroyed entirely late into the show's final season, with the introduction of Brian Whittle. Brian Whittle was the primetime television equivalent to a giant asteroid narrowly missing the planet. It's one thing to throw a wrench into a show's primary dramatic storyline, but breaking a show's firmly established narrative structure with only 15 episodes remaining in its entire run is a cardinal sin. And with the abrupt introduction of Brian into the story, much like Pam, The Office was flirting with disaster.
I just feel like I'm on my own here. I mean, okay, not completely on my own, but in terms of people who can do something, thank you, Brian.
But before we get into how The Office narrowly dodged this bullet, be sure to like and subscribe to Nerdstalgic if you haven't done so already. The Office's comedy is certainly driven by its ensemble cast of top-tier comedic talent. Throughout the entire show's run, almost every single reoccurring character has an opportunity to really shine. The mixing and matching of these incredible characters is done in a way that always feels fun, fresh, and exciting. We really get to see a lot of these characters pair off in ways that played with the overall charisma of the show. Michael and Dwight played with the hero-sidekick dynamic filtered through a veneer of ineptitude, whereas Jim and Dwight often felt like a real-life version of Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd. Throughout the show's run, we see a lot of this character shuffling. The writers seem to have a lot of fun pairing characters together to see what worked and what didn't. And more often than not, it ended up being pretty successful. Despite the writers' penchant for mixing and matching characters, Jim and Pam's relationship never really strayed from our interest. Even when Jim transferred to Stamford to distance himself from Pam, their relationship was still a focal point of the show. It was a fresh take on an aging and tired will they or won't they trope that really piqued viewers' interest.
So,
Do you...
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, everything's pretty much the same here.
Oh, good.
Their relationship is really what makes The Office work so well, because it hits us right in the heart. We see these two characters and we want them to be together, and after they are together, we want them to stay together. They are, without a doubt, the most important characters on the show in the sense that they serve as a grounding tool for some of the more insane characters on the show. Their reactions to any given situation presented on the show are incredibly normal, and through this normalcy, these reactions allow the absurd behaviors of the supporting cast to really stand out. Without Jim and Pam there for us to relate to, The Office would likely derail itself into an absurd clown show. This was even more true for the show after Steve Carell's departure. This all almost came to a crashing halt in the middle of the show's final season at the end of the episode titled Customer Loyalty. After an intense fight over the phone over Pam's failure to film their child's dance recital, Pam begins to emotionally break down. This has happened before on the show, but this time, something rather strange happens. The camera pans away from the action at hand and toward the actual crew, who have been serving as silent observers to Dunder Mifflin's daily operations for a decade. We aren't quite sure what to call this. In a show that constantly breaks the fourth wall, this is like breaking the fifth wall. We are then introduced to the character of Brian, the boom operator, for the first time as he rushes to console Pam during a time of crisis. In this seemingly white knight moment, he tells the camera crew to stop filming and give Pam some space.
I just didn't know that it was gonna be this hard.
Yeah. Let's turn the cameras off. Seriously, guys. Enough.
It feels like a strangely intimate moment, and it's made even stranger by the first scene of the following episode, Junior Salesman. At the top of this episode, Pam has a brief conversation with Brian, who has apparently been reprimanded for intervening in the previous day's dramatics between Pam and Jim.
Well, thanks for being a good friend.
Sure, anytime. How about you and Jim? Everything squared away?
Yeah. Mostly.
In Andy Green's book, The Office, The Untold Story of the Greatest Sitcom of the 2000s, it is mentioned that Greg Daniels was actually intending on having Pam and Brian seem like that they were going to hook up in an attempt to shake up Jim and Pam's relationship, ultimately leading to a separation. Writer Brent Forrester said that the intent was to have Jim and Pam split up and have them rekindle their relationship in the final episode. Jim and Pam separating and reconciling wouldn't be a weird thing or even necessarily a bad thing. They had done it before, and it's not like marriages don't come without their struggles. The problem here is that the writers are trying to shake up too many things at once. By breaking the fourth wall and actually showing the crew, The Office breaks its narrative and it changes the entire tone, feeling, and style of the show. Having one of these crew members insert themselves into the show's primary narrative feels disrespectful to the viewers. John Krasinski actually had the wherewithal to say something to Brent Forrester about the move to split up Jim and Pam in this way. According to Forrester, Krasinski said that since this final season of The Office was essentially for the mega fans of the show, it would be too painful for them to see Jim and Pam go through a divorce. The episode that really made fans upset is in the episode titled Vandalism, where Brian steps in to physically defend Pam from an attack.
So someone needs to shut you up! Hey! Whoa! Easy!
This was the moment where Greg Daniels was finally able to see that he was heading down a dangerous path with these two characters. There were only a handful of episodes left to produce, and fans were becoming increasingly agitated with the idea of this character being forced down their throats as a potential paramour, and destroying something they had watched grow and evolve for a decade. This prompted some quick thinking on behalf of the writers and editors, and Brian's character was whittled down to little more than a speed bump on Jim and Pam's journey. We see Brian one more time when Pam heads over to his home to ask him just how much privacy the documentarians violated during their time filming Dunder Mifflin. And honestly, watching this scene play out is kind of nerve-wracking at first. We don't really want to see Pam hook up with Brian. We don't even want to think about it. At this point, audience members are likely audibly shouting the words, "Don't do it, Pam," at their televisions. Thankfully, Pam just asks him a simple question, leaves, and Brian is never heard from again. Having Jim and Pam go through a separation would have been really tough on viewers who knew that their time with them was coming to a close. Having Jim and Pam go through a separation because of Pam's infidelity would have been disastrous. Having that infidelity occur with a character whose very appearance disrupts the show's narrative would have destroyed the show entirely. It would have been thoughtless and maybe a little callous towards what drew viewers to The Office in the first place. Sometimes writers feel the need to make drastic changes to keep the audiences interested, and in some cases that might be true, but The Office was so successful that it stopped becoming just a television show for some people, and in turn became more of a comfort. It was somewhere we could go to have a few laughs and a few feels for a brief amount of time, and you can't disrupt something like that so abruptly, especially after telling the audience that this is the last season that they would be receiving that comfort. Thankfully, Greg Daniels realized this and was able to fix the problem before it was too late. But to this day, the character of Brian Whittle is one of the most hated characters in sitcom history, and the scar that he left on audiences' hearts will always kind of be there. The Office actually wraps up quite perfectly. There's no shredding of divorce papers, no forced drama, it's just fun, heartwarming, and silly. Much like the entirety of the show. And well, that's it for this one. Feel free to chime in and let us know what you think in the comments section below. You might see a couple of links floating in the player window. Feel free to click on one of those if you want to stick around, and thanks for watching Nerdstalgic.